Hello, everyone. The book that I decided to read was When I Was Puerto Rican by Esmeralda Santiago. It's right here. Voila. And just to talk about like the gist of the book, it's just Esmeralda Santiago talking about like her upbringings growing up in Puerto Rico and then making the transition to moving to New York with her family. And so I'll just kind of talk about the book bit by bit. So the beginning of the book, like the first chapter, starts when she's 4 years old and they live in like rural area. The city is called Macun. She's four at the time, and it just talks about like the background. Like they call her Negi because she's darker. Negi short for Negrita, and she she likes to spend more time with her father, and she's kind of more curious about the things that he does. And after that, like chapter two is it begins to dive into more of the relationship of her parents. Like her parents fight a lot, and her dad's always gone for a while, and then he comes back, and so you kind of see this problem infidelity going on with her father, and then and then Esmeralda Santiago begins to go to school and all that, and then let's move on to chapter three. So with the issues going on between the parents, it's hard for them to stay together because they're always fighting. So the mother takes them and they move into the city-ish like area called Santurce. And then Esmeralda has to go to a new school, but she has a tough time. And then she's kind of like uh, bullied in a sense. They call her Hibarra because she's from the rural areas. And now she goes to a school in the city and all that. And even though like the mother took them in to go live somewhere else, her and her father still have a relationship. The mother and the father still have a relationship somewhat, and the mother becomes pregnant with more children. And then chapter four is more of a political chapter, as it talk about because it's an election year in that chapter, and we see how politics play a role. Chapter five is Esmeralda spends time with her grandmother, and there she learns of like the term jamona, which is basically a single woman. And at that point, she realizes that it's better to be single than have to go through what her mother goes through, because she sees like the struggles that her parents have in their relationship. The next chapter is Esmeralda's mother gets a job, much to the dismay of the community there. They think that she's a terrible mother for getting a job and leaving her kids with like a neighbor to watch after them. And we'll just move on to the next chapter. After that, it's kind of like the mother tells Esmeralda that she needs to kind of help out with the children and sort of all of that, and that it's part of growing up. And Esmeralda doesn't really like it because she sees that the kids don't really follow her orders and don't really take her serious. And actually, that's the previous chapter. And then a major thing happens in the chapter 6, which is her cousin goes over one day, and she has a bicycle, and she's giving all of the kids a ride. But Esmeralda tells them that it's time to stop and all that. But they don't listen to her, and her cousin doesn't listen to her, and her cousin decides to give her little brother Raymond a ride. And he gets his foot tangled in the chain, and so then he has problems with his foot later on. And a few chapters down from there, the family has to move to New York. Well, the mother moves to New York first because they take the son to see doctors because his foot keeps getting worse, and they begin having conversations about amputating his foot. but his mother won't allow it, so she decides to go to New York to seek medical treatment. And as she stays there for a while, that comes back, and then after that, she decides to take the kids over there with them slowly, some at a time. And so then at that point, the family moves to New York. They move to Brooklyn, and their grandmother's already there. The mother has a brother who lives there, and it's just another transition that Esmeralda has to deal with. And when she moves there, she has to go to a new school, and her uncle had told her, or it's not her uncle, but it's another like elder, was that here, if you don't know your English well, they're gonna hold you back a grade. And so when they went to go talk to the school, they try to hold her back a grade, but she struck a deal with the school, and she was able to stick to 8th grade, and she was able to learn enough English well that she was able to remain in 8th grade. And another dynamic of that is that when they're in New York, her mother meets a new man, and they start spending a lot of time, and then he moves in, and they end up having another kid. And throughout the whole time in the book, Esmeralda's mother is having more kids, so she starts with a few siblings, and then it's more keeps going on as time goes by. But this man, he ends up dying from cancer, and then the book kind of ends on Esmeralda getting close to high school, and then the teacher's asking her, like, what do you want to do? And so they recommend her to go to like an art school. She does an audition, and even though it wasn't great, they respected her courage to go take it, and she was accepted. And then the book ends on, there's an epilogue, and then in the epilogue, she reveals that she returns after 10 years after her graduation, and that she's currently a student at Harvard. And so some of the like issues or how we relate this book to the anthology that I want to talk about is that as we see, United States politics plays a brief role, like in the beginning. And this is just a quote that I want to say. It says, "My papa says the government doing all this stuff for us because it's an election year. What does that have to do with it? They give kids shots and free breakfast, stuff like that, so that our dads will vote for them." And this is a conversation that Esmeralda is having with another student in one of the elementary schools. And it's, basically, and he's right, because after the election is over, they stop providing all of this stuff. And then to go along with the politics, it also speaks on like assimilation. And there's just another quote of when Esmeralda is speaking with her father. And it's, "In 1898, Los Estados Unidos invaded Puerto Rico, and we became their colony. A lot of Puerto Ricans don't think that's right. They call Americanos imperialists, which means they want to change our country and our culture to be like theirs. Is that why they teach us English in school, so we can speak like them? Yes. Well, I'm not going to learn English so I don't become American." And so we already see before she goes to America that she's resisting their culture and doesn't want to assimilate, even though we see the influences of America on Puerto Rico. And then when she makes the transition to New York and she goes to the middle school, she sees the dynamics of the different kinds of Puerto Ricos. She makes it distinguish. "There were two kinds of Puerto Ricans in school, the newly arrived like myself and the ones born in Brooklyn of Puerto Rican parents. The two types didn't mix. The Brooklyn Puerto Ricans spoke English and often no Spanish at all. To them, Puerto Rico was where their grandparents lived, a place they visited on school and summer vacations." And how I can relate this with the anthology is this kind of resembles the dynamic between Chicanos and Mexicans discussed in the section 4 of the anthology of the Danger Zone. We just see how even though they come from like the same heritage, they're very different. And then one of the reasons for the migration in the book is because her younger brother Raymond, his foot gets stuck in the bike, and then they're seeking medical treatment. And here's one of the quotes. "After many such visits, the doctors finally told her that it might be best if Raymond's foot were amputated. Are they crazy? Mommy complained to Poppy that night. Don't worry, she muttered into his hair. I won't let them cut off your foot. I'll find a specialist. Someone knows what he's doing. And this kind of resembles No Face in the anthology, in which they have to seek to go to America or the Americas up north for better medical treatment because where they live can't provide the type of medical treatment that they need. And yeah, these are some of the correlations that I was able to make from this book to the anthology. Thank you. Good luck to everyone in the finals.